Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Taxpayers are making an enormous investment and have potentially a huge liability. They want to see their interests protected. Now, that should mean no more irresponsible behaviour, no more inappropriate dividend policies, and no more indefensible bonus packages. Will the Prime Minister confirm that these will be conditions of the agreement for getting taxpayers' cash? And crucially, can he tell us how these conditions are going to be enforced once everyone has actually signed up?
Mr. Speaker, again, I'm grateful for the chance to explain how we will move forward this particular proposal that the Chancellor announced this morning. As far as the remuneration packages available to executives are concerned, it will be a condition of the capitalisation of banks that they will accept new conditions attached to executive remuneration. And we are in discussion on a case-by-case basis with the banks that want to take up this scheme about what will be the level of executive remuneration, but particularly the bonus system that has caused so much difficulty. Our aim is to support and reward work and enterprise and responsible risk-taking, but not to reward irresponsibility in risk-taking and excessive risk-taking that has caused so much damage. So the Financial Services Authority will be looking. Well, I was asked a question. I think I should have the chance to give the answer. The Financial Services Authority will publish very soon a consultative document about the danger to company balance sheets if, by excessive risk-taking, some of their executives put the balance sheet and put the company at risk. And this will form part of their estimate of what capital is needed by these particular companies. So it is not only a question of the individual banks that we are dealing with having to accept new conditions. There are strings attached, conditions have to be met, but it is also the case that throughout the system, the Financial Services Authority will be proposing a new way of dealing with executive remuneration, particularly bonuses, which will allow them to regulate according to the capital requirements of a company that takes excessive risk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I ask a question that follows directly from the answer the Prime Minister has just given? Those banks that are most reliant on this scheme are the banks that have taken the greatest risks and in some cases have behaved irresponsibly. So can the Prime Minister guarantee that in those banks there will be no bonuses for senior executives this year?
Mr. Speaker, I think we've got to get both sides of this right. He said early on he did not want any bank to fail, and we will take all the action that is necessary to ensure that banks are stabilised and they can continue and resume the normal process of lending. At the same time, we will insist in the conditions in which we issue shares that executive remuneration is as we want, based on responsibility, based on hard work and based on effort and based on enterprise. But that will be part of the negotiations that we will have, and I think it's right to say that these should be had on a one-to-one basis between the government and the companies. Of course, these matters will be made public because that is what companies are required to do.
No one wants banks to fail, but also no one wants rewards for failure. Taxpayers now have an investment, so taxpayers have an interest, and they will rightly be infuriated if they see their hard-earned money going in bonuses that are rewards for failure. Now, the other thing that the taxpayer would expect is that everything possible is done to improve the regulatory system. Now, one of the problems is there is no one in the system who is there to take an overall view of indebtedness in the economy. Will the Prime Minister look with a genuinely open mind at restoring the role of the Bank of England, the role they had for decades on calling time on debt levels in the economy? The regulatory system needs not just the right rules, but strong institutions. Shouldn't the Bank of England be restored to its proper role in this regard so that this never happens again?
Mr. Speaker, of course, under the new legislation, for which I believe there is now all-party support, the Bank of England will have a statutory role in the supervision of the system. But I have to remind them that when we came in 1997, there were 7 or 8 separate regulators, all involved in the system, and we coordinated that within the Financial Services Authority, and we led the world in that way. And as for bonuses, the FSA, the Financial Services Authority, will be responsible for issuing rules about capital adequacy to firms, and they will take into account whether these firms are taking excessive risks by rewarding people on the basis of short-term gains and not long-term success. And so when he asks what will be done on a case-by-case basis where we capitalise the banks, we will lay down conditions. As for other companies and for the rest of the system, the FSA will now be in a position to regulate the capital requirements of firms according to the risk-taking that is involved. And I do hear what he says about what he thinks about the irresponsibility of people in the city and some of the adjectives that have been used, but I have to remind him what he said on the Andrew Marr show. What you won't hear from me this week is the sort of easy, cheap lines beating up the market system and bashing financiers.
Gavin